best as I could.
Full Mystic, not one of those cards getting its last hurrah here in 8-set standard. Just yet, at least.
Ooh, Ross with a couple of quick mulligans, really putting the Austin loss here. Oh, Lord, is Ross gonna... He's got to keep this 5, right?
Yeah, I mean, Mystical Dispute into Quench or Negate into something else. I don't see what 4 you're hoping for this. And Autumn's 7 that I believe they kept, it's not super impressive, but they're going to have time to put something together against a mediocre 5-card hand from Ross.
Yeah, this is a spot where some of these cards look okay on their face, but I think it's the kind of draw where you're going to look at Baron bouncing Autumn's own creature if they make it to that portion of the game.
Are we just running out the turn 2 corridor monitor?
What? No, absolutely not. There's a Thassa's Oracle. Dumb. Well, get your head in the game.
Okay. We could do that too.
That's just legal. Old
I feel like the
legal
corridor
plays
monitor...
Harvey, they call him.
The monitor sends a bigger statement, but the Oracle maybe is the safer, more conservative route.
I mean, the turn 2 corridor monitor is certainly more disrespectful.
It is funny how Autumn's deck just clowns any kind of 1-mana 2-1s. If there was a Savannah Lions in this format, if your opponent's showing up with Gutter Bones, this is a good place to be.
Someone just plays Venerable Knight and you go, oh yeah, let's do this.
That is usually what you're saying when your opponent plays a Venerable Knight, but in particular when you have a Thassa's Oracle in your deck.
Honestly, 9th card Leyline of Anticipation is exactly how Leylines play most of the time.
You take the good with the bad. And now Ross put in the unenviable position of thinking, do I want to spend a Mystical Dispute just on this turn 2 Thassa's Oracle? And it turns out he does.
Oh no, and he misses. He had 2 draws to find another land. He's bricked so far.
All right, Emma, I think it's time. Let's go.
The old naked corridor monitor.
We see the corridor monitor casting a long shadow over the arena here. And there it is.
Untapping itself.
Untap nothing. Crunching for 1. And now we just get to land this Thassa.
Oh, corridor monitor's going to untap itself again?
Sadly, we cannot untap a Thassa yet. That's not a creature. We'll be in short order, though. Stay tuned on that front.
Thassa blinks the corridor monitor. Monitor untaps itself. It can block whatever it wants.
Oh, look at this. Arcus Hour off the top. Turning on the Thassa immediately and offering the perfect blink target for a Thassa. A second copy jumping into the hand. And this is the quintessential Ross Merriam feature match experience.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Ross has been losing to Thassa in the feature match area since 2013.
This is where we need one of those Versus Live face cams on Ross just to see what kind of expression is hiding behind that magnificent beard.
Ross Merriam picking him up game 1, finds a tap land that's not going to be good enough.
A quick game run for Autumn Burchett. Now Ross, he's not on Team Avengers, he's on Team of Flash, which means he does have a sideboard that he gets to access here. That copy of Mystical Dispute, I think it's safe to say, is coming in. What else appeals to you?
I think most of what we're going to be seeing is just already good in the main deck for Ross. I think that game, obviously, Ross was mana screwed for most of it, but how close he was to just being very in that game with a single mana source more really speaks to how well a lot of Ross's cards line up against a lot of Autumn's, right? These are the kinds of decks that Flash decks tend to prey upon. These sort of high synergy decks with a lot of low impact cards that you can ignore early, Thassa's Oracle, Corridor Monitor, etc. So I would not expect to see Ross messing with the formula too much here.
Even that Wilt has a ton of repeating targets in Autumn's deck, and I think Autumn wisely shaving some of those to minimize the blowout potential of that card. And you can find Autumn and Ross, 2 of the best riders in the game currently, over on Star City Games Premium every week, every other week. Just $7.99 a month to join that. Get access to a lot of exclusive benefits, as well as 5% off sealed products, 10% off singles, and 15% off all of your gaming supplies. Just at starcitygames.com/join-premium.
All kinds of great members from the coverage team writing over there. You can see down there Patrick Sullivan, Cedric Phillips, just really the best of the best.
Surely the 6 most important writers featured there on the graphic, with Autumn and Ross coming in close behind.
They're just doing their best. See, some people do, and those who cannot do right. That's how it goes, I think. So that's why we see Ross and Autumn in the feature match here.
And the closer you are to the center of the graphic, the more important you are, I believe, is how this works.
Honestly, I can agree with that. Sheldon's just the best there's ever been.
So our 2 players ready to challenge each other once again here for Game 2. We'll see if Ross can participate more in this game. Bring some of those sideboard cards to bear.
Thinking it maybe wants to be on the draw to make sure we don't have as bad a flood again.
There is the Mighty Quench, an all-star in these flash decks, a good way to make up the numbers.
And this is the sort of hand that Ross really just has got to feel great about. That Quench is something that's going to buy some time and punish Autumn for trying to use their mana efficiently, but then also has these late-game threats in things like Nightpack Ambusher and Nissa Who Shakes the World.
Oh, Mystical Dispute, a great pickup for Autumn for a few turns down the line. And we see a favorite card of theirs in Essence Capture, something that has won them a lot of money and accolades over the past year and a half.
Oh yeah, it's the kind of card that you gotta imagine Autumn Burchett just kind of peppers into a lot of decks, like a lot of us do, Salt in their favorite soup or what have you.
It may not be correct, but hey, just consult the scoreboard for a second and get back to me.
It just tastes right.
Sure does. And we see another copy of Gadwick the Wise and Spectral Sailor as the options of Thassa's Oracle. I imagine the second Gadwick is not what we're looking for, but Spectral Sailor could be. But we send both to the bottom here.
Yeah, there's a point where you don't want to bank on spin a draw step on a card like Spectral Sailor if you don't even have your 4th land rolled up. And Autumn's hand is quite reactive. You do just want to be hitting your land drops whenever you have all these cards like Essence Capture, like Negate, and Gadwick.
Yeah, that 4th land drop may be what Autumn was looking for, and they do find it. An island running off the top there. And the way you can tell is that it's the same as all those other islands, so it's a lot easier to count them. A shock in off-breeding pool for Ross Merriam. Signaling something, but the benefit of Team of Flash is that could mean so many different things. We know it could mean Nightpack Ambusher, if Ross wants to try for that here. We could offer Shark Typhoon instead.
Yeah, at this point you have to wonder if you're in Ross's seat, if you think trying to go ahead and just force one of these ambushers through is going to be better than cycling the Shark Typhoon. I think you want to try and set up the old Simic Flash 1-2 punch of Ambusher into Nissa if you can. So I think we're going to see a cycle of the Shark Typhoon digging for that 5th land to try and set that up for the next turn cycle.
Well, we have Nightpack Ambushers 4 days now, so Ross may feel some more freedom to run those out there, not even caring too much if they get countered.
Really, a 2-2 Shark versus a Thassa's Oracle is a near poetic racing situation.
And a lot of reactive cards here for Autumn, who is kind of playing like a mono-blue flash deck at this stage of the game, but there is some tension between those and the sorcery speed card advantage engines in their hand. Is this a time, do you think, to go for an Arcanist Arrow or maybe a tiny Gadwick?
It's certainly a scary spot, right? Because having something like Gadwick or Arcanist Owl stranded in your hand like this, the longer the game goes, you might feel like those cards get better, but when you're behind, they're not actually doing a ton for you, and that's exactly the squeeze that Ross Merriam is trying to put on Burchett.
It looks like we're choosing a value of X for Gadwick, and we just want a 3-3. Trade Armadon in the house here for Autumn.
Whoa, that's trained Armadon with a triggered ability.
Well, sure. I know there's some extra words on there somewhere.
Oh, there's a lot of extra words. I see 6 lines of text if you count the X, 7 if you count the type line, 8 if you count the name, 9 if you count the artist.
Well, look, in 2020, that may as well be a vanilla creature.
Oof. All right, Dom, it's a little early for you to be getting that heavy with things. If you're like about a 3 out of 3, if we can get you to like a 2 out of 3, that would just be great.
All of our standards have had to change a lot over the past year, okay? I'm not alone in this.
And Ross trying to figure out if you want to actually counter this Gadwick or if this is a spot you want to play a Night Pack Ambusher. And this is exactly the squeeze that Autumn is trying to put Ross into, because now Ross doesn't have the mana to have this slam Night Pack Ambusher into untapped slam another Night Pack Ambusher draw.
Yeah, Ross could not use the quench on this Gadwick, so has to go for the Sinister Sabotage instead. And Autumn perfectly content just to let that resolve. Another Gadwick in the chamber for next turn if we want to repeat that sequence.
And Ross, in a lot of ways, may just be trying to use the Sinister Sabotage to dig for another mana source.
Yeah, we find a Ketria Triumph. Not the untapped mana source that maybe we would prefer, but I don't think we were planning to slam the Nissa here anyway.
Yeah, I actually think that being a tap land works out just fine when everything in Ross's hand is exactly Nissa Who Shakes the World and even mana cost spells.
So a 6th island here for Autumn Burchett, getting the mana advantage here over Ross. And now, what value do we want to assign to Gadwick?
Or even Arcanist Owl. If you're going to do a Gadwick for 1, I think there's merit to even looking at developing the Owl here.
Yeah, that works. And look at this, Nightpack Ambusher, the first of many for Ross. Essence Capture gets to counter that and upgrade this Thassa's Oracle to a 2/4.
Ooh, now it's going to win the race against the Shark. Do.
The one copy of Uro in Ross Merriam's 75, or in his 60, excuse me, not looking great at this juncture.
No, this is a spot where Ross really doesn't want to be tapping out, and Autumn has also worked very hard to just not give this Quench very many opportunities to be a playable card.
Some would say there were never any opportunities for Quench to be a playable card ever.
I think the opportunities were the Quenches we cast along the way.
A 7th land now, so we can go for Owl with Negate and Dispute Backup if we want. And here we go. There is Arcanist Owl. Hovering over the battlefield, ready to be cast.
And this is getting really close to that sort of 1-2 punch that Ross has been trying to sculpt the game towards. Because Arcanist Owl was not quite punishing enough for Ross to try and spend a reactive card on it a majority of the time. This is going to give him that window to cast a Night Pack Ambusher, actually make this copy of Mystical Dispute cost 3, and then resolve Nissa Who Shakes the World during Ross's turn.
And I wonder if Autumn will sniff that out and maybe not even dispute the Nightpack Ambusher, but I don't know if you can afford to let that one resolve at this stage.
Yeah, I think there's a point where you just have to try and get value on Mystical Dispute where you can.
Yeah, so Autumn has an intuition this could be coming, but decides that they have to just dispute the Ambusher anyway. And so now here's the window for Ross.
All right, Nissa Who Shakes the World on the table.
And we get to hold up Quench and Will, which can take down that Arcanist Owl. Nice plummet analog there for Ross. And we see, just firing off the Wilt now, Ross knows that Quench is effectively dead at this point, with Autumn having 7 lands in play and now an 8th one coming off the top of the deck.
Well, Gadwick can just try and gas Autumn back up at this point. This may be what Autumn feels priced into doing.
We're going to see a full price Gadwick? Yes, we are. 5 cards back for Autumn, but just 4 more lands and Star Typhoon, not what the doctor ordered. Now we have 2 more Nightpack Ambushers and Uro, which we can cast at
all
least... Yeah, I think we
literally all of them.
We can actually have it all here. And the nice part is we don't even have to commit to those ambushes now. We can attack with our breeding pool and then still get to do all of that.
Jeez. And this is the problem whenever you're playing against these flash decks, is if they get to resolve Nissa, the world is just their oyster. look at how many game actions Ross gets to take here. Talk about mana advantages really just kind of snowballing into a bunch of efficient threats being able to be developed onto the battlefield at the same time.
And this, I would say, is not even a great Nissa deck, but it doesn't matter. You know, as we said before, any Nissa deck really is a great Nissa deck.
Yeah, when you have this card that just basically doubles the number of resources you have in the part of the battlefield where you keep your lands, and then also creates threats in the spot where you keep your power and toughness cards. It just plays on so many angles that you can't really go wrong.
And Autumn has enough land, so that Shark Typhoon could do some good work, but I don't know if there's going to be enough time for that.
Yeah, at this point, they're just really having to play to stay alive.
And one issue of this mono blue devotion deck is, unless you're setting up some kind of incredible combo turn, it's tough to get back into the game when you are this far behind.
Right, you can see them taking a trade with their Gadwick here because they know that card's triggers are not really going to be worth very much. It did its job.
And now the Ketri of Triumph that's about to trade gets to just help cast this Nightpack Ambusher. And Ross can still cast any of the 3 cards in his hand left over on this turn.
Well, to quote that Nightpack Ambusher, woof.
Is that the sound that wolves make?
Oh, I wasn't aware you were a wolf expert. Is this you questioning my own experience with Nightpack Ambusher?
I'm not saying they meow or anything, but I was just checking in to make sure.
Well, the one hand is more woofing, and the other one is ambushing, whatever sound that is.
Good multitasking there from Nightpack Ambusher. We'll see if this Arcanist Owl can dig anything good up. But if it does, that might run headfirst into Quench. And this is already lethal on board here for Ross.
Yeah, even blocking 3 things? I don't see how Autumn's going to be able to get out of this and survive this turn, because now Ross can just cast the other copy of Nightpack Ambusher.
So I think we're about to see a game 3 here, very shortly between these 2 very accomplished players.
And this game sort of illustrates exactly why this Temur Flash deck is great in the early stages of a format. Whenever you're trying to do something sort of experimental or something that leans on a specific kind of synergy, Temur Flash is going to be great at picking that sort of thing apart. It wins on mana advantages, and it has just enough power cards in Nissa Who Shakes the World, Uro, Nightpack Ambusher, and so on, to be able to slam the door shut on the single turn or two that the opponent stumbles.
Yeah, the way Standard has moved over the past year or so, it has been all about generating as much mana as possible and then playing these sorcery speed makers that win the game if they resolve. And often if they do resolve, you can't really catch back up as easily, so you have to contain them on the stack. And so that's the perfect recipe for this Flash deck, but it hasn't really come together much so far. We saw the Simic Flash deck that Seth Manfield, Brad Nelson, Javier Dominguez used at the Mythic Championship last year to good effect, really took that tournament by surprise. Flash hasn't really popped up much since then, but maybe this is a time ember for it to make its resurgence.
Yeah, outside of, December of last year, it just hasn't been a major player in the standard format, and I think that was largely on the back of the fact that Uro made the ramp deck so much more attractive. But now, without Growth Spiral or a payoff like Wilderness Reclamation, I think the deck really could just be in the perfect spot to try and make a comeback here.
And this Temur Flash deck even gets to be an Uro deck in its own right. Only 1 copy in the main deck, but a second one in the sideboard if you want to lean harder on that against some of the aggressive decks that I'm sure we'll see later today. All right, Autumn, what have you got? A handful of 7 cards, but I don't know if any of those are enough to let them survive through this attack.
Yeah, at this point, if you're an Autumn seat, you more or less just have to weigh how big you want the shark to be.
Even making a shark and blocking the 3 largest creatures, yeah, we still take exactly 7 thanks to that Spectral Sailor.
Yep.
So here we are, going to game 3. Any sideboarding changes you would have in mind for these players?
At this point, I think you mostly just have to run it back. The issue when you're playing a deck like Autumn's Mono Blue Devotion deck, for example, you're in these positions where you really only have so many cards that you can bring in, so much flexibility, because you try to sideboard out most of your synergy pieces or your cards that don't stand very well on their own. You can see Nyx Lotus, Corridor Monitor, and so on just hanging out in their sideboard. So there isn't really a ton of wiggle room there, right? You're not going to go, well, I think I like all of my Nyx Lotuses on the play. If they weren't good the last game, they probably aren't much better this game. There are some instances of that being a bit different, but for the most part, I imagine these players are going to be kind of sticking to their guns going into this third game. And
you can see Ross Merriam in action every Tuesday, every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern on Versus Live with Corey Baumeister, who you see characteristically grinning there for the world to see. You can catch that at starcitygames.com or live on our Twitch page, on this channel, or on our YouTube channel after the fact when all of those are uploaded too. So you can take your pick of how you want to catch Ross being thrashed by Corey in a hilarious but humiliating fashion.
And we do love to rag on Ross, but he's actually been part of the Versus Live crew for a long time, and that's just because of how good he is at the job. Right, it's fun it's interactive. You get to ask a bunch of questions, and you also just get to see how the pros actually play test the games, how they try out different sideboard plans, why they sequence things the ways they do, talk through their mulligan process, and so on. It really is a lot of fun. I've gotten to guest on there a few times and watch it a good bit myself.
Is one of the best people in the game to talk about Magic too. On as knows his stuff, and also just the technical quality of his writing through the roof as well. And then also you see him fielding those questions on SCG Live, people who feel maybe having questions, having doubts about deck building choices, things they see in the game. Those doubts dispel. And look at this art for Autumn here. We have the Turn 1 Spectral Sailor into more reactive cards. So Autumn gets to play the flash game here, and we see them main phasing that Spectral Sailor to play around a possible turn 1 Mystical Dispute from Ross's side.
And this is something that is reinforced from those Wilderness Reclamation mirrors before, where the person on the play, they knew their opponent would want to shock in Dispute to do something like a Growth Spiral anyway, so you just have this sort of muscle memory of slam my Spectral Sailor, get it through the Mystical Dispute, and threaten the ability from that spirit for basically the rest of the game.
Oh, look at this, though. Dueling Spectral Sailors.
Well, it looks like it's going to be a draw. And this is exactly where Ross wants to be, because that's one of the only pieces of material that Autumn has that they can develop in the early game that would force Ross out of position. And that's just to say that he always kind of wants to be the person dictating the pace of things.
And now, Uro here for Ross gives Autumn a window to land that Nyx Lotus, but I think Ross knows that without any material on the battlefield, that Nyx Lotus is not threatening in the slightest.
And you can see Autumn prioritizing gusting this Uro because this is just going to completely tap Ross out for a turn and let Autumn do whatever they want. And I love this.
Oh yeah, 1/1 Gadwick.
Oh, I love a bluish Visionary.
And that card is not so easy for Ross to remove. He does have access to 4 copies of Brazen Borrower in his 75, but if you bounce the Gadwick back to hand, then it gets a lot of value on the way back down if Autumn can force it through.
Yeah, at this point, the best thing that Ross could hope to answer that with is the combat step with something like a Night Pack Ambusher, but bricking on that land, that's going to inform Autumn on one, that Ross's hand is full of action, but if he's also just kind of desperation casting like that, it also might tell Autumn that Ross just doesn't actually have a great answer to Gadwick.
Now, would you be tempted to hold up with Negate and Essence Capture, kind of covering all possible bases there for Autumn, or do we take this window to slam that Nyx Lotus?
I like slamming the Nyx Lotus because Ross can't check Nyx Lotus and do anything that's going to keep Gadwick out of the way, and just developing something like a Night Pack Ambusher doesn't matter if you're untapping with 8 mana and this copy of Arcanist Owl in hand, because that's going to get the Night Pack Ambusher out of the way.
And we see that there. Ross gets to wield that Nyx Lotus, But Autumn's fine to just let that happen because it means that Ross can't use his limited mana on anything else. And now we're kind of in the same spot again, but that second mana left up from Ross opens up the door to Quench, to Negate, to various things that could profitably with that Lotus.
Yeah, having 2 mana open here really changes things up for Autumn, where they want to be able to do something to force their spells through. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up just playing this Nyx Lotus here to try and trade it for a Negate on a turn where Ross can't punish them for tapping out.
Castle Vantress does make the draw go style of game a bit more appealing, but Autumn decides to make Ross have it. And as you say, even if Ross does have the Negate, this might be the best window for Autumn to take that card out of the equation. And now that 6th land allows Autumn to play the Arcanist Owl and either defend it with a Negate or to just let that go and hold up one of those interactive spells.
And you can see them really wanting to make sure they can weave Arcanist Owl onto the battlefield more than they're worried about making something like Nyx Lotus resolve, because Arcanist Owl actually comes with card advantage if it resolves, whereas Nyx Lotus does not.
Oh, we drew into Nissa Who Shakes the World and the 5th land, thanks to Shark Typhoon. But tough to just run that out there in the face of all that open mana from Autumn.
And look at that Uro hiding out in Ross's graveyard. That's castable. That's one of the dangers of playing this long, grindy game with the Temur Flash deck.
There's Shark Typhoon for Autumn.
Oh, Shark Typhoon's a great pickup. That's one of Burchett's best tools to actually hang in this sort of game that Ross is creating here.
And Autumn can make a 4/4 Shark as it stands right now, and that, in conjunction with Gadrick, that's a fast slog. That can get this game over and done with.
Yeah, it would not shock me if we see that get held up here.
So Owl gets disputed.
And I think Autumn's okay with this, and the reason they saved this for this turn is it keeps Ross on the back foot and turned off that 1-2 punch of Ambusher into Nissa.
And that 1-2 punch has assembled itself now. Ambusher joins Nissa in Ross Merriam's hand.
Oh my, is Ross actually going to have just Uro with Dispute back up?
Here it is. And that little flourish on the Essence Capture, Autumn knows they have to go for it, but I imagine not expecting this to resolve.
Oh no. And this Uro is one of the things that is so hard for this Mono Blue Devotion deck to actually combat.
And one feature of, well, I was going to say, there are not many instant speed cards in this Mono Blue Devotion deck that we can use to tap down the Uro and threaten to contain it. Own of the Sea is one of those, however.
That is one of the better cards for Autumn to pick up here.
So I imagine we'll see that before Ross can head to combat. But using the Omen now means that's less mana to sink into the Shark Typhoon, makes it harder to force through that Negate if we have to fight over something like a Nissa.
Yeah, now Autumn is priced into sort of trying to keep this only the Uro in check with this holding pattern, and that is not a good place to be.
Oh, but Aethergust can provide a much more permanent answer to that Uro.
Oh, that's a really nice pickup for Burchett.
Even Mystical Dispute to pair with that Negate in a counterfight.
Yeah, this is a ton of flash cards and interactive ones that Burchett can have. Really having all of this with the Negate, the Shark Typhoon, this is the pair of cards Burchett needed to find here. Now, it almost is a sort of, it's the reverse of the game that Merriam's trying to create. Look at all these 4s and 5s in Merriam's hand.
Autumn deciding, is this a time to fire off the Shark Typhoon?
have just a wall of counter spells in hand, it's hard to justify it, but when you have an Aether Gust on top of your library, you've got to feel some level of invincibility almost.
It's unfortunate this is only a 2-2 shark, which will trade with its rival in the air. We'd love to get that one above that breakpoint if we could, but just using your mana efficiently on this turn may be a bigger focus for Autumn.
Right, when cards like Quench enter the mix, making sure you actually get to use your mana efficiently becomes something you need to prioritize, because that card is just taxing you on that axis.
But now that the shields are down, does Ross want to just try and land that Nightpack Ambusher here? It's tricky because that means that he doesn't get to hold up Rewind at the same time. You see the Ambusher ready to pounce. It looks like it is leapt out of Ross's hand. Or not.
Oh, gotta make sure the auto tapper doesn't do him in. Well,
so now
Gadwick could be good, but I just don't think we're at that point of the game now.
And Quench, a good way of pressuring that Gadwick. And it's tough because there are now two very appealing targets for that Aether Gust. Maybe we have to gust the Ambusher back and just tap down the Uro, but then that doesn't feel good either, so Autumn between a rock and a hard place here.
I'm weighing if they want to give Ross the option to redraw one of these cards. Or if they want to run the risk of allowing Ross to draw another counterspell. And this is such a tough position because this is two cards that these are both creatures that Autumn needs to get off the battlefield.
Just passing the turn for now. Ross plays up his own Castle Vantress. And Ross getting dangerously close to being able to play Nissa with Rewind backup. So Autumn does have the two counterspells needed to fight through that.
It is Gust time, but what's it going to be on?
We can't put that tough choice off any further.
Alright, and the reason that Autumn is trying to get the Nightpack Ambusher off of the battlefield is because Gadwick can actually contain this Uro if Autumn can just find spells, whereas Nightpack Ambusher is going to create more bodies, which just kind of is a natural foil to Gadwick.
And no more instant speed ways to do that right now, although we do have... we would have the Castle Vantress to help dig for those, but we're missing that final mana to scry on this turn. Maybe it's time to catch in that Omen of the Sea.
And look, it looks like Ross is thinking about rewinding this Aether Gust.
I think I kind of like it. Now, this does mean that no matter whether he wins that fight or not, he won't get the Wolf at end of turn off the Ambusher. But he may not need it at this stage.
Yeah, just being able to pressure Burchett is so huge here.
You see the stack growing and growing even further.
Gadwick saying, hold on, let me get in on this. Let me tap something.
This is kind of nice. We get to tap down the Shark, stave off that attack even further.
Or that block. Look how low Ross's life total is getting.
Yeah, Ross is down to 9, not jumping back up to 12 thanks to Uro this turn. Autumn can attack in for 5. Ross goes down to 4. So maybe we can find a way to bob and weave around this and finish the job.
All right, Ambusher goes on top.
Oh, look at that. That's a deep dwelling.
What does that do?
That one is active right now. That one trades cleanly with Uro. Can tap it down on a future turn. And Ross only has a quench, and that is just not good enough to deal with Thassa.
Yeah, if you're an Autumn Sea, you've got to imagine, if you're not casting it now, when are you casting it?
Exactly. And so now, let's say Ross is able to just pass with the Ambusher up. If Autumn keeps finding lands, or they have like another instant to pair with Gadwick, they can just tap everything down and get to work. Can even flicker our Gadwick to give it pseudo vigilance.
And honestly, there's a point where if Ross attacks with this Uro, you might just take 6. You don't want to put it back in Ross's graveyard and just let him escape, gain 3 more life, draw another card that way. Ross thinking about this quench, saying, I think my next turn just has to be Nissa plus Nightpack Ambusher. I need Autumn to tap out of a counterspell right now.
So there's quench.
I think if you're an Autumn Sea, you have to go for this. Ross has so much mana here.
Absolutely. You pay, you force Ross to have the second counterspell.
It's a close decision, right?
And this can only really be, I guess, another quench, unless the idea is you force Autumn to tap all their mana so they don't have, let's say, another Omen to trigger Gadwick. So here's Nissa and Nightpack Ambusher. We're just fiddling around with the Auto Tapper here, I imagine. And main phase Ambusher for Ross. Playing around a card like Essence Capture that could very conceivably be in Autumn's hand.
That likely means no attack from Uro.
Right. And now, does Autumn have good attacks?
Well, any 2-drop blue spell off the top is lethal if Ross doesn't attack.
So he might have the best possible attacks.
And that's just Gadwick, Mystical Dispute your own Gadwick, with the Gadwick on the battlefield tapping 2 things. One more blue spell would tap a 3rd creature and make it so blocking Thassa would not be good enough.
Yeah, Mystical Dispute just as twiddle him might be enough to get across the finish line.
Ross weighing if it's time to attack with this Uro.
And this is Uro taking one for the team, essentially. And there's Ether Gust. So yeah, if Ross had not attacked, that would have been lethal. And this, I think, is this still lethal anyway?
Oh, it is lethal. Absolutely lethal.
It sure is. We can Gadwick, dispute our own Gadwick. Play Ether Gust. Or you can just do it this way too. That works.
Activate the Thassa, Gust the Ambusher, tap the Shark, attack for 11.
I feel like the dispute your own second Gadwick line has a little more flair to it, but hey, you don't get extra credit for that. All you need to do is deal 20 damage. Or I guess if you're Autumn, you can trigger a Thassa's Oracle for 27 or something.
I'm not trusting the auto tapper. I just want to do it clean, simple, and make sure that I'm getting the W, like Autumn Burchett is about to do here.
And Merriam, it looks like it's taking a loss.
And that is